Hi, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of A Proud Malcontent. Forgive me if I'm a little flustered here. I'm Pete Bell. I am a proud malcontent. I'm a wee bit flustered because with about 90 seconds to go before we went live, the camera shot disappeared. A little bit of a problem with the Restream software that I'm using. And because I don't want to interfere with it anymore, I won't be able to give you the screens that I'm looking at. When I posted about the uh, show this afternoon, I posted three questions. A new spirit of rebellion in the SNP? Question mark. Well, yeah, and if I'm seem a little bit less malcontented than usual today, it's because, well, yes, there are signs of a growing rebellion in the SNP, among the SNP membership, and it's coming from different directions. Unfortunately, the National seems to be totally unaware of the Newington resolution, which, as many of you will already know, is surely the most important and promising resolution to be submitted for the SNP's October conference. But the National, it just seems to be blanking it completely. Over the last few days, there's been maybe half a dozen articles about resolutions being submitted to the conference, and they have focused entirely on John Swinney's resolution, the leadership resolution, and the one that I was calling. I had previously been calling the McCormick resolution because Graham McCormick seems to be the spokesperson for the people behind it. I believe it's more correctly referred to as the Tweed Bank resolution, another SNP branch. And there are supposedly 43 at the last count, 43 branches supporting that resolution. That's quite a lot. That's fairly weighty. Uh, so there's pressure coming from these directions from the membership with two resolutions. I'll just remind you at the National, there's two, yeah. And there may be more. There may be more, which isn't necessarily good news because it's not necessarily a case of the more the better. You're better with one strong resolution that is very heavily backed by the branches than numerous resolutions that may be similar but are just slightly different. Because what happens then is that the committee, the conference committee, will try and merge them all together into a composite resolution. And uh, a lot of stuff can get lost in that process. And it tends to be, coincidentally, I'm sure, coincidentally, it tends to be the stuff that the leadership would most like to get lost. I shall say no more than that. I'm not casting aspersions at all on the work of the conference committee. Perish that thought. So there's a lot of pressure on John Swinney at the moment, and it's also coming from outside the party with people like Robin McAlpine today in the National, who simply says that John Swinney's indie plan will not work. It is not designed to work. And that is perfectly correct to that. It isn't designed to work. It can't be designed to work because it very obviously won't. It simply cannot work. it's all about the Section 30 process. It puts Westminster right in the centre of the issue, and it puts Westminster in the driving seat. It gifts Westminster a veto that they are simply not entitled to. Nobody's entitled to veto the will of Scotland's people. So Robin McAlpine's article is very good, but there was a few things in it that I had to disagree with. And that was mainly his claim that the independence doesn't happen because of the public support doesn't come because there's a process. The public the process comes because of the public support. I tend to disagree with that somewhat because I think people need to know. This is the subject of today's blog article, by the way. People need to have confidence that something actually can happen before they come to support it. There are some people, obviously, who are lifelong independent supporters, or very, very committed independent supporters who don't really care about process so long as it happens, and they will support the idea of independence regardless. But there are other people who need to know that it's going to happen or that it can happen, and they have to have laid before them a process, a plan, an explanation as to exactly how it will be done, how it can be done. And once they see that, that changes their attitude to it altogether. Whereas previously they may be indifferent, they or just borderline, just slightly interested. Show them the process, how it's actually going to be done, and at the very least, you will seize their interest again. And goodness knows, the independence campaign could do with something that grabs people's interest. Other headlines today in the National that caught my eye. This is a goodie. Ian Blackford to give shock return in Kate Forbes' seat careful consideration. Kate Forbes, of course, the Deputy Prime Minister, who's standing down. She will not be standing for re-election next year. So Ian Blackford is giving careful consideration to making a return, what the National calls a shock return. A shock can mean a lot of different things. And he's going to give this serious consideration, careful consideration, I should say. And he says he's been invited by a number of people, asked by another number of people if he will stand. And I think the careful consideration should have been among those people who have asked him to stand, because I don't see Ian Blackford lighting any fireworks in the chamber at Holyrood, and I don't see him igniting the independence campaign in any way at all. He was a big disappointment as an MP, and I think he'll be a big disappointment as an MSP as well. It sounds like something that's a cliche almost, but new blood, the SNP could do with some new blood. It could certainly do with a heavy injection of seriously committed independence supporters who put the independence cause first. At least initially, because what tends to happen is that they go into politics, they go into Parliament all out for independence, and then they get caught up in the machinery, and all of a sudden they find themselves in a position where they're simply not able to say what it is that they want to say. That happens rather too much. Of another headline here, and it's I've spoken about the Robin McAlpine one, which is very good. That's Robin McAlpine letting rip, and he's really laying into John Swinney, and deservedly so. John Swinney needs a bit of laying into. He's uh, uh, he's not doing well at all, and he looks as if he's struggling. We'll come to that in a moment. Another headline here is John Curtis. John Curtis lays out most likely, in quotes, route to a new Scottish independence referendum. I wouldn't bother reading that article if I was you. It's just more stuff that is pretty much supportive of the mainstream idea in the independence movement, that it has to be done through the orthodox idea that it has to be done through Westminster, that we have to have Westminster's consent and cooperation, otherwise a referendum cannot happen. Okay, John Curtis can't think of another way that it can happen. However, there are other people around the constitutional issue who can. We're not all John Curtis, and there are people who can imagine ways that we can have that referendum without Westminster's consent and cooperation, without Westminster's permission. Which we shouldn't require. We don't require in the first place. This has been sold to us as an absolute necessity, and it really isn't. It shouldn't even be permitted. Even seeking a Section 30 order is, as I think I've explained before, an act of treachery. Scotland was an independent country, and the First Minister of Scotland, or the Prime Minister, I would rather keep the title First Minister, but the First Minister of Scotland was to stand up and deny the sovereignty of the Scottish people. If he was to stand up and say that, we would like to introduce this policy, say a universal basic income. There's a nice one. We would like to introduce universal basic income, but we'll have to get permission from the English government first. Imagine that. You're an independent country, and here's the head of your government saying, we'll have to go to a foreign government, and the Westminster is, and the government in London is effectively a foreign government when it comes to the constitutional issue. And imagine the First Minister doing that, going there and asking for permission. This is kind of strange that we have all these politicians and all these pundits, the likes of John Curtis, who simply cannot see past the Section 30 process, the Westminster consent argument. They simply cannot see past it. They cannot see anything else. I find that just remarkably strange, and I think there's an explanation for it, and we'll come to that explanation when we take a look at the National's headline article here. Excuse me. John Swinney dismisses SNP members' rival independence plan. Well, that rival independence plan is, of course, the McCormick resolution or the Tweedbank resolution. I'm afraid I'm pretty stuck on the habit now of calling it the McCormick resolution. However, you'll know what I'm talking about, and especially if you're a reader of the National, because you won't know about anything else. You certainly won't know about the Newington resolution, which is the one that you should know about, because the National is not reporting it at all. Not reporting it at all. So I was going through the John Swinney's the article about John Swinney. It's an interview, actually. This was an interview at an unspun event held by the Herald. I think we've had other material from that interview. And it's not doing the First Minister any favours at all. He was talking to good old Brian Taylor, on stage at Summerhall. When he was asked if he had any truck with the rival proposal, that's the Tweed Bank proposal. I think we can be absolutely certain that he'd have no trunk with the Newington resolution. It's a bit bold and adventurous for Swinney's blood. And anyway, asked if he had any truck by Brian Taylor, if he had any truck with the McCormick resolution and the plan that it outlines, which, just to remind you, is basically to make the list vote, the regional vote, a plebiscite, a referendum on independence. And the majority of the votes in the list's ballot, and that's a mandate for independence. No, not quite. It's a mandate for negotiations with Westminster around independence. So, yeah, it really isn't that much better than what Swinney's offering. Back to the article. Again, Brian Taylor asked him if he had any truck with a rival proposal. No, I don't, he said, because I don't think that is an argument that would have any legal force at the end of it, because it's not an agreed process. Oh man, that is so depressing. He's totally stuck on this Section 30 process. Just can't imagine anything else. Further down, he says, without an agreed process, Catalonia tried to secure its independence and it did not succeed. It's a totally different situation, you balloon. It's totally different. Catalonia is locked into the Spanish state constitutionally. There's a constitutional lock there. That constitutional lock does not exist in Scotland's case. We're not locked in. The Spanish state is constitutionally defined as indivisible and indissoluble. And that is the barrier that Catalonia has to get past. The only barrier we have to get past is our own government and our own First Minister's reluctance to actually proceed, because it's quite open to us to proceed towards independence. It's quite open to us to initiate the process. It's perfectly possible. Scottish UDI plan explains how it's possible. There are obviously other people who think it's possible, because they're trying to come up with other plans which avoid Westminster. Unfortunately, they all end up in negotiations around independence with Westminster. I'm talking ALPA and the McCormick resolution. All of these so-called plans have the same flaw. They put Westminster at the centre, where the people of Scotland should be. The Scottish UDI pushes Westminster out to the fringes, pushes it out of the picture altogether, and it makes it entirely about the will of Scotland's people. That is why it's different. But the fact that here we have the First Minister of Scotland, a man that you would suppose, and the leader of the Scottish National Party, supposedly a nationalist party. And you would be forgiven for thinking that he knows a wee bit about nationalist politics. And yet here he goes comparing Scotland with Catalonia. It's frankly idiotic. And I'll get to what it suggests to me in a moment. But further down, he says, I'm simply saying to people, look at the precedent for all of this. When we got a majority, that is an SNP majority, he's not saying that's not we as in the independence movement, it's we as in his party. when we got a majority in 2011, it led to the legislation which gave us a referendum. Well, let's skip over all this stuff, but gave us a referendum. Uh, uh, any any referendum which is given is not going to lead to independence. Otherwise, it wouldn't be given. So let's just forget that, and just hope that John Swinney forgets it as well. But here he is. He's talking about 2011, and he's using 2000. I mean, it was probably better with Catalonia. 2011 is a lot further away than Catalonia is. There's just been so much has happened in the intervening 14 or 15 years. So much has happened. So much has changed, and much of what has changed has been within the independence movement itself. It's been the thinking and the debating and the discussing and the work that has been done on understanding Scotland's situation, our constitutional situation, our true constitutional situation, not the one that is being sold to us by politicians, the one that puts Westminster at the centre. Scotland's true position is entirely different. So how can he be unaware of this? This is what I can't comprehend. How can he be unaware that there has been this massive shift in thinking in the independence movement? Not the whole independence movement, but it has happened across the independence movement. It's not confined to one particular group, such as the Scottish Sovereignty Research Group. There's it's not confined to one group. It's across the whole of the independence movement. People have been thinking on from 2014, looking at the campaign, looking at the way the whole proposition was structured, and thinking about it and coming up with better ideas. And here's we have a First Minister who's totally oblivious to this. He's oblivious to the fact that there's a constitutional lock on Catalonia, and he's oblivious to the fact that a hell of a lot has changed in 14 years. I don't know where he lives. Actually, he lives quite close here, but I don't know what planet he's on sometimes. And then, yeah, I started off a bit less malcontented than usual, but reading this stuff is getting me back to my normal malcontented self. Here's John Swinney again in his interview with Brian Taylor. Go back to the roots of Scotland and a representative democracy. The identity and the foundations of our ethos as a country is based on the sovereignty of the people. It's deeply founded in how Scotland has influenced the world. Wow, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's a really clear statement of the sovereignty of the Scotland's people. Well done, John Swinney. But it's unfortunate that there has to be a but. He's just contradicting himself, because he's just said that Westminster is sovereign, that they have to go to Westminster for permission to have a referendum, a constitutional referendum, that we have to have their consent and cooperation in order to exercise a right that is inherently ours, the people of Scotland. It is ours. It is an inalienable human right, our right of self-determination. And yet John Swinney never questions Westminster never challenges Westminster's veto. He complains about it, but he never thinks to challenge it. He never thinks to say, hang on a minute, we don't recognise your veto over the will of Scotland's people. We don't recognise your authority to stop us having a proper constitutional referendum. That authority exists. That authority that Westminster asserts, it exists and it has power in Scotland through the Scottish government, through the Scottish Parliament, because both the government and the Parliament are allowing themselves to be agents of the British state, agents of Westminster. They only need to say no. They only need to say no more. We're not going to work for you anymore. We're going to work for the people who elected us. They only need to say that, and that's Westminster's authority broken. If they do it right, when they break with Westminster's authority, if they do it in the right way, Westminster won't be able to challenge it. There'll be no challenge, no successful legal challenge. If it's done by taking it into the realm of human rights, it will not be seriously problematic. I guarantee that it will not be seriously problematic. So here's a man, there's either hypocrisy or stupidity involved here. How can he sit and in one breath say that we need the permission from Westminster, and then in the next breath make this very worthy statement about sovereignty? This is politician speak at its worst. Just saying what's expedient at the time, regardless of whether it all joins together or not. You just the soundbite in the moment. What he said about Westminster and the legality of that's what he's saying to reassure worriers about legality. Then later on, he's talking about the sovereignty of the Scottish people, so as to reassure people like me that he's right on board with that sovereignty. Well, he isn't, because you're either completely on board with sovereignty or you're not. It's sovereignty is indivisible, kind of like the Spanish state. It can't be shared. It can be pooled. That's the basis of democracy. We all pool our individual sovereignty, but it cannot be shared. It cannot be divided, and it cannot be transferred. So if he makes that statement about the sovereignty of Scotland's people, he's given nonsense. Given nonsense to the statement that he made earlier about needing Westminster's permission. The two things simply don't go together. They totally contradict one another. And that's in the space of what was probably no more than a few minutes of an interview. A massive contradiction. Finally, the SNP leader further said there would be no mucking about and that voters would be in no doubt that a vote for his party in 2026 would be a vote for Scotland to be an independent country. Well, I was a member of the Scottish National Party for 60 years, and I've been involved in the independence movement for even longer than that. Much longer than that, actually, if I count the years after I left the SNP. And I always thought that any vote at any time for the SNP was a vote for Scotland to be an independent country. Why the need to reassure people about this in 2026? Well, the reason is because people have been made to doubt that it's a vote for independence, because we've been voting for the SNP for years, decades. They're going into their 18th year, and will it be their 18th year in office? And nothing has happened. There's been no progress at all. Alex Salmond's work aside, that's an exception. That has to be taken as an exception. But aside from that, and since then, absolutely nothing whatsoever. Nothing has been done. So That's why he's having to give this assurance. If it hadn't been for all those lost years, he wouldn't need to give this assurance that it's a vote for independence. A vote for the SNP is a vote for independence, and it's another contradiction because he's just said that a vote for the SNP is a vote for negotiations with Westminster to get a Section 30 order. It's not for independence at all. It doesn't end at independence. A plan for independence has independence as its end point. Swinney's plan has probably fruitless and pointless negotiations with Westminster as its end point. And independence remains uncertain. So it's not a vote for independence. It's a vote for Swinney's plan, and Swinney's plan is to go with a begging letter to the British Prime Minister, in all probability to be rebuffed, as everybody has before. Now is not the time. It's kind of sickening. It's kind of sickening. I'll move on from the new spirit of rebellion in the SNP, and to talk briefly about the another aspect of John Swinney's what he likes us to think of as his strategy for independence, and that is the convention. He said that there was to be a convention. I think he said it was to be immediate, but that was some time ago. So it's not been immediate. And nothing else is known about it at all. Kenny McCaskill, the leader of Alapa Party, he made this point that nothing else has been clarified. Now, you remember I said just a moment ago about how people doubted that a vote for the SNP was a vote for independence, and they suspected that it wasn't. There's also now that established by the SNP through their own conduct, and I just have to stress here that I'm talking about the SNP leadership, through their contact. They've made people doubt that a vote for the SNP is a vote for independence. They've also made people very suspicious, very dubious about announcements such as this convention, because we've heard this so many times before. There's going to be this initiative, or there's going to be that initiative, and there's this great fanfare when this initiative is announced. Citizens' assemblies, anybody? Yeah, whatever became of that? I know there was some meetings. I actually went to two, I think, and they were the meetings themselves were great, and the people at the meetings were great. But all that stuff got fed back to the SNP leadership, and then nothing happened. Nothing happened. So people suspect this. They hear about this convention, and again they tend to think that it's just the SNP, another one of these initiatives. They're a bit shy about asking for money these days for reasons that, for legal reasons, that probably can't go into. But they still come up with these initiatives from time to time. The rebuttal unit. There's another one. Yeah. I think I saw one rebuttal from the SNP. So this convention, well, what about it? What is it going to be? What's going to be its remit? Who's going to be invited? Is it going to be inclusive? The other thing that the people tend to suspect, when I say people, I mean me, but I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone because I'm in touch with a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people, in communication with a lot of people, and they say exactly the same. The thing with these initiatives is either they evaporate after the big announcement and the press headlines and the sound bites and all the publicity and the things are stirred up. I mean, they then just evaporate. probably because somebody's looked at it afterwards and said, it's maybe not such a good idea, not if you want to keep control. Setting up any body outside the SNP suggests a lack of control, suggests that might be something that the party leadership can't control. And the control freaks, we all know that. All politicians, all governments are control freaks to a certain extent. But I think the SNP win prizes for theirs. So this convention, will it be truly inclusive? I mean, will there be people invited to join in this convention who depart significantly from the orthodox? People like myself, not necessarily me. I'm not sure I would want to take part in that. I'm not sure my temper would stay reined for very long. But people like me, people, free thinkers, people who are not locked into the old orthodoxy, the Sturgeon doctrine, people who have been part of that movement-wide rethink, what Alf Baird called the intellectual wing of the SNP. Which needn't be that great a compliment when you look at the other wing. But the people who actually think for themselves and think beyond the orthodoxy, break through the barrier of that orthodoxy and all the forces that are arranged to keep you within that orthodoxy. So will any rebellious voices, dissenting voices be heard at this convention? And what will be its remit? What will be its powers? If it is to be convened by the Scottish Parliament, that's one thing. It will take on the democratic legitimacy that the Scottish Parliament can afford, having been elected by the people of Scotland, the sovereign people of Scotland. If it's a separate thing, if it's not established by the Scottish Parliament, then it's difficult to see what it can do. There's been suggestions that it might organise, it might be used as a base from which to organise a campaign of civil disobedience or a direct action of some kind. But I don't know about you, but to me, that doesn't sound like something that the SNP would be wanting anything to do with. So I'm a bit doubtful about that as well. We don't have any word about dates or but when the meetings will be or where. We don't have anything. It's been left wide open, and where these things are wide open, I suspect, I always suspect that they won't transpire at all, or they will transpire in a way that just isn't satisfactory. And that brings me on to a final. I haven't got a chat switched on here, and somebody's been in touch. Oh, I have a very attractive young lady on Facebook saying hi to me. Hi, very attractive young lady, who's probably a fat, greasy Bulgarian lorry driver, but hi anyway, where was I? Oh yes, another point. If you have any questions or any comments, by all means, I will see them on the screen here. The third question that I asked this morning when I was publishing, pushing the program, publicising the program. That's a word that I'm looking for. Struggle these days. Third question was, that was a good one, huh? Yeah, I remember it now. Has Alapa Party wasted another opportunity? What do I mean by that? Well, ALPA has had an opportunity from the outset, from its inception. Excuse me again. Fringe parties have an advantage. The part, no hopers, as some people would put it. I would never put it that way. I mean, anybody that's willing to set up a political party and stand candidates and do all that, you know, they should get a bit of respect for that. Should never refer to them as being insignificant. But they are fringe parties that they're on the fringes of electoral politics. And they may still be very important in the political context for some contribution that they make. But this is where ALPA party missed out, and they've done this from the outset. They wanted to sell themselves, portray themselves as the pro-independence alternative to the SNP. But that was their sole selling point. The sole selling point was, we are not the SNP. So initially, they rode the wave of discontent with the SNP, which at that time, we're talking 2020, or early 21, that wave of discontent with the or malcontent with the SNP was very powerful, very strong, and they rode that wave basically on the basis of, we are not the SNP, and it's all, you know, SNP bad, therefore ALPA good. And they missed an opportunity, because being a fringe party, the advantage that fringe parties have, and you'll often see this with opposition parties or smaller parties, the advantage that they have is that they get to say things that mainstream parties which actually might form a government, might actually be given a mandate to realise their manifesto pledges, or the things that they've promised. Those parties, those mainstream parties, have to be careful about what they promise. Keir Starmer accepted, of course, and more and more politicians accepted. But overall, generally speaking, the mainstream parties have to be careful what they say, whereas the fringe parties, by contrast, can promise the world. Yeah, so long as it doesn't get too ridiculous. They've got to maintain a bit of credibility. But ALPA never seized on that opportunity to make themselves truly distinctive from the SNP by adopting a markedly different approach to the constitutional issue. And they have a different approach on other topics, other issues, policy issues. Let's leave them aside. Let's focus on the constitutional issue. That was supposed to be the main plank of the difference, that we are not the SNP. Look at our strategy for independence. Well, for a long time, we didn't even know what that strategy was, and asking questions about it would just get you labelled an SNP loyalist. If you asked any questions about ALPA in those early days, and it's actually not so different now, but all you would get was a long tirade about how bad the SNP is. You ask questions specifically about ALPA, and ALPA wouldn't even be mentioned in the reply. None of ALPA's policies or positions would even be mentioned. It would be all about the SNP. I get the same thing now when I ask questions about Liberate Scotland. I get replies that are like 99% we hate the SNP, or 99% old news about how the SNP has failed. Yeah, I know all that already. Don't tell me that. Tell me what your plan is. Oh, but the SNP, no, the SNP. And when you're talking to Liberate Scotland, it tends to be about Alpha Party as well. Alpha missed that opportunity to be different, to seize on something like the Manifesto for Independence. That opportunity came round again. It has come round again. They had this opportunity before the 2021 election. Alpha was virtually a tabula rasa. It was virtually a blank sheet. You could write anything on it. So they could have written a brand new, reframed approach to the constitutional issue. They didn't. They brought all their baggage over from the SNP. Most of them were ex-SNP. They brought all their baggage over, and they put Westminster front and centre. They deny it, but read their strategy document online, and you'll find it's just as much about negotiating with Westminster as the SNP. There really is not that much difference between them. Neither one actually mentions Section 30 anymore. They don't actually use that word. It'd be interesting to find the last time any SNP or Alpha Party spokesperson actually used the term Section 30. Because I certainly noticed that a while back, I think before the 2021 election, where it suddenly disappeared. You didn't see it in any articles, you didn't see it in any blogs, you didn't see it in any speeches from SNP politicians. And then Alpha came on, and Alpha was the same. Don't talk about Section 30. Use a form of words that escapes it. What's his name? Yousaf. Hamza Yousaf. His one was a favourite of mine. It was, and I paraphrase slightly here, perhaps. It was ask Westminster to give democratic legitimacy to a vote that is supposedly a vote by the Scottish people for independence. Like a vote by the Scottish people doesn't have democratic legitimacy. It has to get that from Westminster. Go away, Hamza. That is just nonsense. And that is all to avoid saying Section 30, because they know that Section 30 has become a bit toxic. And Alpa's wasted this opportunity, kind of like the SNP in that regard. We all know the opportunities that the SNP has squandered over the last 10 or 11 years since 2014. And Alpa seems to be doing the same thing. They're squandering this opportunity. My view is, this is a reasonably informed view. My view is that if Alpa was to adopt the Manifesto for Independence, follow the line that's in the Newington Resolution, but follow it all the way. And the main thing about that is making the election about the powers of the Scottish Parliament and about our right of self-determination. Make it about that and not directly about independence, because as we're getting lots of people saying now, a referendum, a de facto referendum on independence will not work. And there's lots of reasons why it will not work. I've explained a few in a blog article a couple of days ago. But Alba had the opportunity to do something radically different. And I would guarantee you that if Kenny McCaskill stood up tomorrow and said, we've had a rethink of our whole approach to this, and we've decided that the 2026 election should be a de facto referendum on the Parliament assuming powers over constitutional affairs in order, immediately, in order that the Parliament can legislate for a proper constitutional referendum, there being no other way. That's an important point. Now that's it. Again, it's made about self-determination. It's made about a right. But if Alba had done that, they would immediately have got a boost in the polls, a significant boost. Remember, they're starting from a low base. You know, their numbers would double, triple, maybe quadruple, pretty much overnight. I'm absolutely sure of that because it's something bold and dramatic, but at the same time credible that people in the independence movement crave. And there will be people beyond the independence movement as well, because there are people out there who are never active in the independence movement, but they're on the fringes and they're watching what's going on. And they're thinking about the election next year, and they're looking for something. They're looking for something that isn't the John Swinney offer. He's got it precisely wrong. And it's almost as if, as I said in today's blog, it's almost as if John Swinney hasn't sat down, he hasn't given it a thought. He hasn't given any thought to it. No thought whatsoever. And he's had no discussions about it. He hasn't debated it with anybody who dares to disagree with him. He's the party leader and he's the first minister. Nobody's going to tell him, shut up, John, you're talking a lot of shite. Yeah, they're not going to say that. So he gets to talk a lot of shite, as I just said in that interview. The crap that he was talking, contradicting himself all the time. The things that just didn't make sense about, like, comparing Scotland with Catalonia. It really looked as if he had given the thing no thought at all, constitutional issue, since 2014. And then the other day there, somebody came along, one of his aides came along to him and said, First Minister, I hate to bother you when you're busy calculating your pension, but could you please maybe come up with something for our position on the constitutional issue? Oh, do you have to? Just do what we did last time. Yeah? Save me having to bother with it. And that's exactly what it looks like. Exactly what it looks. Just do the same thing again. You know, it's too much trouble trying to think of anything else. But that's the way it comes across. He just hasn't bothered. Yeah? It's pathetic. And I'm afraid Alpa's not much better. Yeah, if there's been any debate in ARPA about the constitutional issue, and any open debate that pulled in fresh perspectives, new ideas, new thinking, if there had been such a thing, there would surely be some sign of it. You know, if somebody had been feeding stuff to Kenny McCaskill or his predecessor that at least looked like feasible ideas, and they were being taken on board, then Alpa's position might have ended up being a bit more distinctive, a bit more different from the SNP. But there's no sign of it. There's no sign of really deep thinking about the constitutional issue at all from any of our top politicians, any of them, MPs, MSPs, the candidates even. From what we've heard from them, there was nothing at all, nothing that challenges the orthodoxy, the Sturgeon doctrine. So I really think Alpa has missed an opportunity. Excuse me. They've missed the same opportunity they had in 2021, because we went through this. Before 2021, we went through exactly the same situation. The only thing that's different now is the actual signs of an internal revolt within the SNP. Small signs, let it be said, but the signs are there and definitely growing. You know, I have to be careful what I say here, because I'm aware of things that I've been told in confidence, things that are going on behind the scenes. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes. That's the most I can say. And none of that was happening in this stage before the 2021 election. We all hoped for a rebellion by the SNP membership. We all looked forward to every SNP conference in the hope that this would be the occasion when there wasn't the automatic standing ovation, but actually some questioning of the orthodoxy being thrown at the crowd from the stage. And we were always disappointed. The membership also missed those opportunities. So it's a long tail of missed opportunities. And is it going to be the same story in 2026? Well, again, this is what a lot of commentators are saying. The way things are headed with the SNP and with ALPA, the way things are looking about with their positions and their policies, what we're going to end up with after the 2026 election is hopefully still a nominally pro-independence majority, anything rather than let the British parties take power. So hopefully we'll keep that majority. But other than that, nothing will change. It'll just be another 5 years. There might be the token gesture of the begging letter to Keir Starmer, which he will either ignore or wipe his arse with, or whatever. Yeah, they won't. The chances of them granting a Section 30 referendum are slim indeed, very slim. Yeah, there are circumstances where you could imagine them preempting the request and actually offering a Section 30 referendum, then attaching all manner of conditions to it so as to make it unwinnable. Not that it would be winnable anyway, because the Westminster always has the final say. There's a comment here from a friend, Stephen Duncan. Should be no British involvement in or interference with or influence over Scotland's sovereignty. Precisely correct, Stephen, because if you allow any of these things, if you allow interference with, influence over, or involvement in our sovereignty, then that is sharing it, that is splitting it, and that cannot happen. It's not sovereignty unless it's absolute and complete, indivisible and indissoluble, like the Spanish state. Right, it's just about time for me to finish up. I've got Ian McLennan on saying end the colonial control, and I'm totally with them on that. But it's up to you people. We need more pressure on the politicians, more pressure on the SNP, especially, but on all the politicians, ALPA, all the other politicians. We need more pressure on them to drop this whole idea of putting Westminster at the centre. We need them to get on their high horse and actually commit to something bold. That's it up for me. I'll be back with you on Sunday at 10 a.m. I look forward to that.